All right, everybody. I show exactly 1 o'clock Central Time, 2 o'clock Eastern. So let's go ahead and get started. I can see people are joining. So while people are joining, I'll take this minute to introduce ourselves. My name is Mike McGee. I'm the Global Education Manager and Senior Processist for Blatchford. Been here for about 12 and a half years and excited to do this webinar. I always say when I'm doing these webinars, I enjoy looking through the participant list and seeing so many names that I recognize. And I just thank you for taking time out of your crazy busy days to listen to us talk about such an important topic. So thank you for that. I want to introduce Chad. Oh, before I introduce Chad, if you look at the QR code there real quick, that is our contact information. Feel free to scan those QR codes. You can always text us, email us, or call us based off of that contact card there. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar or afterwards, feel free to reach out. So, Chad, if you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm Chad O'Connor, Regional Clinical Specialist. Have been with Blatchford for about 5 years and kind of cover all over the U.S., primarily more the western side of Mississippi, from the Mississippi West, but we'll go all over. Do a lot of hip disc articulations, fittings, and yeah, that's it. So thanks for joining.
Thanks, thanks, Chad. So, without further ado, I want to there we go. Hold on. Before we get started, just a couple of quick little house rules. Everybody is on mute, and that just helps everybody. No, not as many dogs barking in the background. Hopefully, my dog won't be barking in the background. And the webinar is being recorded. You can view this webinar and any of our previous webinars on our website, and that's at blatchfordus.com. You can go to the professional section and look under training education. There's a webinar section there. You can find all of our previous webinars. Now, our previous webinars do not have CEU credits, so they're there just for your own information. You can watch them there and just learn about all of our products throughout those webinars. Since everybody's on mute, the best way to ask questions is to type them into the Q&A panel. You should see a Q&A panel. You can type in questions there, and I will be answering, or Chad will be answering as we go throughout. And of course, we'll be pausing for questions as we go. So again, if you have any questions and you don't want to put them in the chat, you can always email me at mike.mcgee@blatchfordus.com, and I would be happy to answer. So what are we doing today? Well, we're going to be talking about the LCD update. I'm sure most people have heard about this, and if you haven't, well, it's news to you, and hopefully you'll be excited about some of the stuff that's coming. So we're going to talk about the LCD update. We're going to be talking about the Orion 3, and Chad's going to be going through the Orion 3 and the links and talking specifically about what those two products provide, and then how they work for the K2 patients. This LCD is all about the K2 patients. So he's going to be talking about how those two products align with this new LCD policy. So let me go ahead and get started discussing this new LCD update. If you haven't read it, you can find it on the cms.gov website. And what is it? It's basically what they did is they extended coverage for all hydraulic, pneumatic, and microprocessor controlled needs to K2 beneficiaries, provided they meet certain criteria. And this LCD change became effective September 1st. So this is a brand new deal, something that that myself and clinicians all around the country have been clamoring for, is the ability to provide hydraulic, pneumatic, and microprocessor control needs for K2 patients. Medicare is listening to the overwhelming evidence that's out there and has agreed to it, provided you meet certain criteria. So let's discuss what that criteria is. First, the individual has to have had an evaluation by a medical professional to determine their functional level. And that's fairly obvious. You're going to do that anyway, but it's a step that's got to be in there. And then the next step is supporting documentation in the medical record has to outline, in the context of the beneficiary's overall medical health, the rationale for selection of a fluid, pneumatic, or microprocessor controlled knee, including at a minimum how the knee is going to, one, improve the beneficiary's functional health outcome, for instance, fall reduction, energy prevention, or lower energy expenditure, and two, help the beneficiary accomplish their activities of daily living. Now, I'm going to pause here just to comment on something. If you've read the LCD make sure you go to all the way to the bottom of the new LLC and read the policy article. The policy article does a great job of giving a little bit more color commentary, if you will, on this LCD. So it goes into a lot more detail, some examples of what ADLs are and that kind of stuff. So if you're unfamiliar with it, go to the LCD and read the policy article. It gives a lot more information. And then, so we've got to have those things. And then it's also, you also have to, as part of the criteria, you have to state that lower level knee systems, excluding the use of fluid pneumatic and microprocessor, have been considered and ruled out based on the beneficiary's specific functional and medical needs. That doesn't mean you have to rule out all knees. That just means you have to rule out the knees as a class. A mechanical knee, like a BMK2 from Blatchford, rule that out as something that's not appropriate for this particular patient and state why. You have to, you can't just say because they like microprocessor knees or they like this or that, they like to plug things in. You have to give them a reason that matches their functional and medical needs. And that's got to be clearly defined in your notes. So that was for hydraulic, pneumatic, and microprocessor. And then what they did is they went beyond that to include some microprocessor knee criteria. And again, this is an all of these must be met. It's not pick and choose or either or statements. It's all of them. They all have to be met. So what are they? Well, first, the electronic microprocessor knee has got to be indicated for functional level 2. And the electronic microprocessor knee has integrated technology that allows the knee to detect when a user trips or stumbles and can automatically adjust to stabilize the knee. For example, stumble recovery. And these last three, I put them together because they're both fairly, they're a lot easier to meet, I guess you could say. They have to be able to utilize a product that requires daily charging and respond to error alerts and alarms indicating there's a problem with a particular unit. And the quick and easy way to explain that or to provide an example that they can do that is if they have a cell phone. If you have a cell phone, you plug it in every night, you charge it, and you can accept that there's notification, there's errors, there's things that pop up that tell you there's a problem with the device. So if you can navigate those things, that's a good indicator. It's not the end all be all, but it's a good indicator that they're going to be okay on the criteria number 3 and 4 for microprocessor needs. So now I want to spend, that's kind of the background on the knee specific criteria and just spelling out exactly what the LCD says. So now I want to spend a second and talk about the Orion 3 specifically, and does it qualify? Well, first we want to talk about it improving the beneficiary's functional health outcomes like fall reduction, energy prevention, and lower energy expenditure. So does the Orion 3 do that? Well, I want to take a quick second here to plug Hanger. Hanger has done some fantastic research. One of the papers that they've done, or one of the analysis that they did, was called the Oasis 1 retrospective analysis of 4 different microprocessor knee types. Again, you can look at all their studies at hangerclinic.com for professionals, Hanger Institute, clinical research, published research, and this is in particular in the Oasis series. Again, they do a lot of good stuff, and this is one of the studies that they have. And what it basically said is they took 4 different microprocessor knees and kind of compared them. Of the 602 patients that were using microprocessor knees throughout their clinics, and had them do a bunch of basically patient-reported outcomes and things like that to determine the outcomes of these. And they compared the 4, and in that comparison, they found that it reduced energy expenditure, they improved mobility, they found that across the board. But then specifically in the preventing injurious falls compared to a non-microprocessor knee, they found that the Orion did that. Orion was one of the only 2 that did prevent injurious falls compared to a non-microprocessor knee when they compared those 4 types. So we definitely know, based off of this study, and lots of studies out there also, but in this one specific independent study or analysis, it found that it does prevent injurious falls compared to a non-microprocessor knee. So we can emphatically say that, or definitively say that. We know there's lots of studies. We also have a white paper that you can get from our website, and that has, it talks all about reducing amputee falls with a microprocessor knee, and it goes into a lot of the detail of the Orion 3 and some of the many benefits of the Orion 3. So that's another example of some of the studies that show that it does help prevent fall reduction, injury prevention, and lower energy expenditures. So then the next step is help the beneficiary accomplish their activities of daily living, their ADLs. So let's talk about some of the specific ways that the Orion 3 can do that. Well, Chad's going to go into a lot of detail on this, but first starting with standing support. One thing that's unique about the Orion 3 is we have a standing support that happens in both full extension and flexion. It doesn't have to be in flexion for the standing support to engage. It does it in full extension, and that's pretty unusual. How does that help in ADLs? Well, by standing support, we mean when the user stops moving, the resistance goes into a really high level, effectively locking out the knee so that they can put as much weight into the device as they need to. So you can imagine things like being able to stand at a counter cooking or doing dishes or brushing their teeth. Those are good activities of daily living. They could also be doing basic things like standing at a soccer game, watching their kid play soccer, and one of the grandkids come up and grab them from the back of the leg and give them a big hug. Well, no matter what they do, that knee's not going to bend. They can't push it and make the knee bend because it's going to be effectively locked in standing support. So that's a big thing that helps for ADLs for the K2 population. What about yield rate? That's another thing that can really help with ADLs. What do we mean by that? The Orion 3 and the Lynx Formatter, they have both of these, but the Orion 3, as the knee flexes, the resistance is going to ramp up. And what that does is provide more support when the user goes from standing to sitting. It means they can sit easier, means they can put more pressure into the limb as they go to sit. They can go down a ramp a little bit easier because it's going to increase resistance as they go down that ramp. They can go downstairs a little bit easier because it's going to provide more support the more the knee bends. So those are a few ways that increasing the resistance against knee flexion helps as the knee bends. It's going to help them with their ADLs. Those are just a couple of quick examples. There's more, and Chad's going to be pointing some of those out as he goes throughout his presentation. So then the next criteria, the extra criteria for microprocessor knees was it's got to be indicated for functional level 2. Where's the best way to find, is it indicated for functional level 2? Well, the most clear example is in the IFU or the clinician manual or whatever the manufacturer calls that particular booklet that gives you all the information about the product. It should be listed in there what the device is indicated for. And our Orion 3 is indicated for K2, and it's not something we just created. We didn't change the IFU to match this. The policy changed to match our knee to be able to do that. This is the same instructions for use, the same IFU that we sent to PDAC back in 2020 when everybody had to submit all of their microprocessor needs to PDAC. So it clearly has this, and this was in the original instructions for use. And it does say activity level 3 here, but then it also says there may be a number of users of activity level 2 and 4 who could benefit from the enhanced stability offered by the device. And it says it there, but it also says it in another section of the IFU here. It says activity level 2, 3, and 4. So clearly it works for activity level 2, 3, and 4. It is clearly indicated for that population. The electronic microprocessor knee has got to have integrated technology that allows the knees to detect when the user trips or stumbles and can automatically adjust to stabilize the knee. Well, Chad's going to go into this particular slide in a lot more detail, but suffice it to say that as the knee is coming forward, if that swing is interrupted in any way, the resistance is going to go not just to their normal resistance, but to an elevated level of resistance. And then if they put pressure in it and continue to stumble, the resistance is going to go up even higher. So it's going to provide an extra level of support for that user as they fall, providing a really high stumble recovery. That's why it did so well in an OASIS study, along with multiple other articles talking about the safety and security of the knee. So we know it's going to have stumble recovery. So we know it meets all the criteria, but what patients are we talking about? Who are the K2 users or ambulators that we're referring to here? Well, you can use things like the amputee mobility predictor, but I've found that they're even using a good outcome measure like the amputee mobility predictor or the timed up and go or whatever it may be. There's still some gray area. There's still they're right on the line. But that's where the Orion 3 fits really well. I know when I was in practice, I had multiple times where I had a patient that maybe was a new amputee. And I thought, gosh, that patient, I really think they're going to progress into variable cadence and do really well. That could be a a younger individual, and they're gonna progress up to K3 no problem. Well, I put them as K3, and the LCD says in the K levels it has the word potential, so I could see the potential in the user, and I could see that they're going to get there. But every once in a while, I'd be wrong, right? You have the patient that you think they're definitely going to do that, and then they just, for whatever reason, it doesn't happen. There's a whole myriad of reasons why it sometimes can be wrong. Or the other way can go. I can say, all right, this guy's or woman's not going to progress. I believe they're a K2 user, and then you put them in a K2 product, and they're out walking that K2 knee in a matter of no time. So we're not always 100% accurate in our predicting where the patient's going to fall in that K2 to K3 level. So this allows you to put somebody in a K2 knee, follow all the criteria you're supposed to, put them in as a K2, but then have a knee that will progress up to K3 and potentially K4, even if they got there. So it's those patients that are kind of in between. If they need a lock knee, this is not the knee for them. But what it is going to do is take somebody who is a true community ambulator that can walk with a walker or cane or whatever, and progress them up to a variable cadence knee and keep up with them as they go. So it's that bubble patient that we're talking about here. So now I want to talk specifically about some of the settings that we can change, and Chad will talk about this a little bit in his portion as well. But when we talk about the knee itself, right, the main difference in K2 and K3, one of the big differentiators there is single or multi-speed users. Well, in the app, there is a spot where you can choose single speed or multi-speed. So you can clearly define them as a single speed user. Very easy to do. And once you do that, it even gives you a warning. Are you sure you want to be in single speed? And then, yep, okay, you're in single speed, just like you wanted to be. So there's a way to do it in our app that makes it pretty clear that it's for a single speed K2 user. Now, let's talk about some of the additional adjustments here. The first one is adjustable swing. So Chad's going to talk about our swing phase control, but it's a pneumatic microprocessor controlled extension assist. But the beauty of the Orion 3 and the Lynx is it's using pneumatics, and we can define how fast it pushes depending on if the user walks slow or medium or fast. And we can change that extension assist based on those specific needs. And here you can see the red would be a slow speed. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but you can see the red here is a slow speed, the medium is yellow, and the green is fast. And you can see these speeds, it's really, really low level here and more of a medium level there. And when they get to fast, a fast swing extension assist. Well, for a K2, maybe you want to make them all the same. So you can go in artificially and put them all, if you didn't do single speed in the programming, if you just want to go back into the fine tune, you can put them all the same speed. But then you still have the ability to control heel rise using a different programming adjustment. We also have the ability to change in this stance reselect screen here. That changes the release parameters. So what we have in the Orion 3 to make the knee release is a 50% toe load plus a flexion moment within a certain timing sequence. But the problem could be if we relied only on a 50% toe load, then you can imagine when somebody steps backwards, that's going to be problematic, right? The knee would buckle. So we have the second criteria of the hip flexion moment to make that fully go into swing phase. That's what keeps it safe when they walk backwards and things like that. But if you're a slow walker, maybe you're going too slow to achieve that toe load plus the flexion moment within that timing window. So what we can do is open up that timing window to make it easier for the K2 individual. So they can load the toe, and you can say, don't forget, you got to come forward, move your hip, and they can still release the knee very, very easily. The 50% toe load is super easy to achieve, but it's got that safety parameter of the flexion moment, and we can change that to make it easier for a lower level, slower ambulator. And this yield rate, that's the second or third screen there. That's the rate of resistance that the knee increases as it flexes. So when you flex the knee at a level of 2, it's only going to ramp up a little bit. If you go to level 3 or 4, it's going to ramp up even faster and more as the knee flexes. So you can define that for that particular user. Maybe you start with a little bit more additional resistance at heel strike and less ramping up as the knee flexes. And of course, we also have training mode, which allows the physical therapist to turn on and off standing support. It also allows you to be able to walk at a single cadence. So those are just a few of the settings. The LCD went on to talk briefly about feet, and it says this first bullet point here is all the stuff it used to say. All these codes are for bullet point number 1, the beneficiary's functional level 3 or above. So all those codes are for 3, right? But it also goes on to say if the beneficiary has a functional level 2, so a K2, and meet the functional level 2 criteria coverage for a fluid, pneumatic, or microprocessor knee. And the higher level foot is required for the safe and proper use of the prescribed knee system. So you can certainly use any of these other feet. You can use K2 feet, of course, but you can also use any of these other feet if you need to for the safe operation of the knee, depending on that particular user's capabilities. Here's just a quick rundown of some of the feet we have. We have a Navigator and Avalon, which are K2. That Avalon is a hydraulic K2 with 6 degrees of dorsiflexion, and that's huge for the K2 population. So a fantastic foot for K2. And then we have an Esprit foot, which is just a very light K3 foot. Epirus, which has multi-axial motion. And the Echelon is a hydraulic ankle with 6 degrees plantar and 3 degrees of dorsiflexion range of motion. And lastly, does the Lynx qualify? Well, we already almost all those functions that we talked about. In fact, let me think through it. Yes, all those functions that we talked about with the Orion 3 also qualify for the Lynx. So whether it's the standing support, the ADL support, all that kind of stuff also works for the Lynx. And when you talk about the feet and the 5973 L code, that was in that previous list. So the 5973 can be used. And to utilize the Lynx, you clearly have to use the 5973 L code. So there's no problem with any of that. In our IFU, it says the same statements. We've got one for the knee here, and we also have one for the foot, because remember, the Lynx has a foot attached to it. So we've got the foot springs here, and activity level 2, 3, and 4 on the technical data page. But with the Lynx, you're going to get the added benefit of the brake effect and the assist effect. Chad's going to go into a lot of that. So without further ado, I'll let Chad go on and continue on with how the Orion 3 works, some of the new features, and the functions of the Lynx.
All right. Thank you, Mike. So moving on with the Orion, let's just talk about the key benefits. Sorry. Yep. All right, so the knee is constantly monitoring in real time. So that means that it can be quick to react to different situations. Obviously, that's important for your K3 patients that are walking fast, but in our K2 patients, it's the same thing. They're walking, and if they didn't see something on the ground, this is going to react quickly to prevent a stumble or a fall. So the knee varies resistance constantly, just keeping it safe. Just like Mike mentioned earlier, if there is a trip that happens or a stumble, right away we have a high resistance, and then that resistance continues to increase to provide this optimal support for our patients. And then the unique pneumatic swing produces a smooth extension assist. The other thing that it does is, without having a mechanical spring to overcome, it's a very smooth and easy transition. Oftentimes, the newer patients and the K2 patients, they're thinking about a lot of things. How do we make this? How do we take these steps? How do we walk? As Mike mentioned, we can increase the delay of the stance reselect time. So that's one thing. The other thing that is happening is the fact that you don't have that mechanical spring. It's a very easy transition. So it's easier for the K2 patients to initiate swing phase because of the pneumatic swing. And then, of course, very simple programming, less than 2 minutes, and only a dozen patient steps. Obviously, especially the newer K2 patients, they might not have their energy level back to where it was before amputation. So the fact that you can get this programmed quickly, efficiently, and therefore utilizing, not tiring out your patient just by trying to do the programming. And then the Orion 3 is now protected against water in the IP55 rating. All right, so new and improved features. New features are heel rise dampening, training mode, app programming, and the IP55. The improved ones are the stair descent recognition, stance flexion. I'll talk about that here in a little bit more detail in a second. recess cover, and magnetic charging point. So both the training mode is a great K2 function, stance flexion, another, I'll explain in a second why that's also a great K2 functionality. So the IP rating is, so the way we did it with the IP rating is we essentially did a water jet test all around, shooting the knee with water, and you can see there's drain holes. So even any water that gets collected inside of the unit itself, it just comes out of those drain holes. Therefore, no worries for water damage. And what does that mean for our patients? Well, they can get out and just enjoy life. They can go out. Here's a gentleman kayaking. Doesn't have to worry about it getting splashed with fresh water. You could be out riding through puddles, caught in the rain, no issues there, washing your cars, just truly living your daily life and not having to worry about what water environments your leg might encounter. So let's look into some of the functions and the features of the Orion. First of all, you have this enhanced stability performance, which includes the controlled stance support, the dynamic slope and stair descent, standing support, stumble recovery, and supported sitting. So let's look at controlled stance support. You have supportive hydraulic resistance during normal gait. So that's giving that optimal support for your patients. Obviously, it's a great feature and one of the main features for a K2 patient, right? Needing that support, needing that resistance for whatever they might encounter. And then it releases immediately before swing phase. So it's giving that support all the way through until the last possible second, right up until they're ready to take that step. And then once again, it's very easy to initiate that swing phase and helping patients use less energy to get through the day. Then, of course, we have that new and improved stance flexion control. So let's talk about the stance flexion. Oftentimes, I like to describe this feature a little bit different than most people think about stance flexion. What we did is with the stance flexion is it's almost more utilized as a rapid deceleration moment. So with our K3 and K4 patients, I think of it in terms of, okay, somebody's going down a steep hill and they want to stop. They can stop on the prosthetic side and it recognizes that and it increases resistance right away because the knee recognizes a rapid flexion moment. So what that means is for our higher activity patients, they can maneuver in quickly, changing directions and essentially planting on that prosthetic side. That knee absorbs that resistance. They can stop quicker and then change directions and pivot and so forth. So very quick, nimble motions for that, right? Well, what does this feature offer for our K2 patients? Well, think about the K2 patient as they could just be navigating even a parking lot, and there's a hill, and then there's something in the parking lot, a crack that they didn't recognize, and it could cause a rapid flexion moment of the knee. Well, stance flexion could engage in that because if that rapid flexion moment was quick enough, the knee recognizes that and right away ramps up even more resistance. So therefore, giving even more support and more confidence for our patients. And then, as I said, in a deceleration moment, it helps patients stop even quicker. So going into dynamic slope and stair descent. The knee recognizes when you're going downhill or going downstairs, excuse me, and because there is no toe load. And it starts off with that medium resistance. And then as you see, as that knee flexes, that red indicates a higher resistance. So what that means for our patients is they're able to put more weight onto that prosthetic side, truly loading that side and increasing that resistance. Therefore, they're more supportive, more confidence, and it actually means that they're able to go downstairs more confidently, but also in a more controlled speed. So for our higher activity patients, that means that it actually patients can go downstairs faster because they can load that side more and more equal. For our lower activity, they can go at that slower speed that's more comfortable for them because they're confident in the support and that increased resistance on that prosthetic side. And then this is programmed in, kind of auto programmed, but then you can go into the fine details of the programming app if you need to, and you can really fine tune that adjustability. And it's no longer a compromise of the resistance for stairs and the resistance for sitting. You can kind of blend the two, and that way you can have a comfortable resistance for both sitting and for stairs. And then, of course, standing support. This engages in a flex position or in a fully extended position. But once again, for our K2 patients, it's going to let patients be confident and have that weight transferred more onto the prosthetic side, having that equal limb loading, which is better for stability. It's better for their safety. It's better for their overall posture. It's better for the hip and back pain, and preventing overuse injuries on the sound side. But with it being able to lock in both full extension and in a flex position, this allows in a more variety of terrain situations. So for example, full extension, you might ask, why would it need to be locked in full extension? Because that's a stable, you should be in with proper alignment of the prosthesis, that should be a stable position. Well, what happens? I know Mike mentioned earlier, a grandparent at their grandchild's soccer game, and their grandkid comes up behind them and gives them a hug. They might not be ready for that, and that could cause a knee to kind of buckle, right? But not with the Orion because of that full extension. The other situation is, what if you're patient standing on a slight slope, right? And if they're facing downhill, that knee is going to want to flex, especially if they're in a fixed ankle, not a hydraulic ankle underneath. That knee is going to want to flex. So they either have to compensate and flex the knee a little bit, which is going to tilt the pelvis, and therefore then it'll lock. But now they're standing uneven, and that can be off balance for them. Or they have to pull back on their glutes and really keep the knee stable and in a full extended position. But with the Orion or the Lynx, they don't have to. They can just have that knee straight, hold it for less than a second, and that locks. And then they can relax into it and fully transfer their weight over. So it's very stable, supportive, giving confidence for our patients in all situations, whether that's brushing their teeth in the bathroom, whether it's doing dishes in the kitchen, or they're out at their child's or grandchild's athletic events. And there is actually, with the Orion, there is 3 settings, so we can delay how sensitive the standing support is, or you could turn it off altogether, but usually you don't want to do that. Sometimes we might do that for certain situations. The normal is 0.8 seconds, but you can double that time, actually up to 1.6 seconds for if somebody needs a little bit more time. The times that we might delay that would be somebody for making it a little bit easier to transition into sitting into a chair. That way they have a little bit more time to get situated in front of the chair before they start sitting. And then here, Mike mentioned this earlier. Here's that video. You can see she trips. Right away, you have a very high resistance, and then it continues to increase that resistance. So that provides that support. Obviously, that is one of the LCD requirements, needing that stumble recovery. Ours takes it to another level, having that increasing resistance as that knee flexes. So it senses all, whenever there's an abnormal step, a little catch, it's going to have a high resistance, and then it's going to continue to increase resistance, giving our patients that time to get their foot in front of them, right? Obviously, important for all of our patients, but especially in that K2 population, having that increased confidence and increased resistance to support them if they were to catch their toe on a curb or uneven ground. having that increased resistance. Here's a great example of the supported sitting. You can see here she sits without having to grab onto the chair, very confidently holding onto her baby, and is able to load that prosthetic side. And what that does is you have that high support, increasing resistance as the knee bends, and they can have a more equal limb loading sitting into a chair. So just checking the questions here. Okay. So having that increased support, obviously for our K2 patients, right, they need all the support they can have as they're sitting in a chair. You don't want to have that situation of that where we always say that plopping into a chair, okay? Having that confidence where they can have that increased resistance as the knee flexes. I always think I reference it in terms of lever arm. So as the knee bends, you have an increasing lever arm happening. And most knees, that resistance stays constant, but as that lever arm increases, the resistance doesn't match the lever arm. So you get that kind of plop into the chair. With this, as the lever arm increases, that resistance is also increasing. Therefore, they can be confident in their sitting and have that the needed resistance for a supported sit throughout the whole range. All right, now moving into the swing phase, we have this natural efficient motion. As Mike said, it is a hydraulic and pneumatic cylinder combined, and it is a sealed pneumatic cylinder. So nothing you have to do. It's controlled by the microprocessor, and it is what happens is that pneumatics help push and extend that knee. So it controls through a variety of situations, whether it's a multi-speed walker or in a single speed. It's going to have a set pneumatic extension assist, right? Making it very smooth, easy transition into swing. And it's controlled by these 4 kind of swing control features. We have that optimal stance release. Mentioned it already a little bit, where it's going to release right at the right time. Then we have a heel rise control, adaptive speed control, and terminal swing damping. So obviously optimal stance release, once again, it releases at the last part of stance. So we have optimal security through the entire stance phase and releasing right before swing phase, right when it's needed to release for swing. Once again, there is no mechanical spring, so it's very easy to initiate that swing phase. Very beneficial for our K2 patients as they're trying to think through a lot of things. How do we take those first steps as they're learning to walk again? This is very easy to initiate that swing phase. And then the default release parameters, they're set up for those K3, K4, but then there is special parameters that is adjusted for a K2 patient. As Mike already talked about, we have the max delay. We can have that stance reselect time gone up to increased up to a max delay, just making it easier for those patients to release and initiate swing phase. Now, heel rise control, this is a hydraulic resistance that starts at a predetermined angle. So what it is usually it's more of for those patients that are going to change speed rapidly. I think of it as somebody walking slow and then immediately going into almost a sprint. It used to be where there'd be maybe some excessive heel rise for a couple steps before the pneumatics kind of caught up, I guess, if you will. Now with the heel rise control, immediately recognizes that there's an excessive heel rise starting to happen, and it increases the hydraulic resistance to prevent that heel rise. So therefore, it helps patients walk faster, even faster or quicker. So what does that mean for our K2 patients? Obviously, they're a single speed ambulator, right? So what happens though, because we all have those goals for our patients, right? We want them to progress and continue to improve, right? We don't want them to be in technology or a component that could inhibit their improvement, their rehabilitation, so forth. So what happens is, as a patient progresses in their rehabilitation, now they're starting to get to that upper K2 and upper, maybe they're going to about to get into that K3, right? And let's say they're going in across a street and um, and all of a sudden they needed to move a little bit faster, and they've now improved where they're maybe about to get to that multi-speed variable cadence, but they're not there yet. But all of a sudden they do pick up their speed just a little bit. This will recognize an potential increased heel rise, preventing that excessive heel rise. So therefore, they're in more control, more support, and can take those quick steps that maybe they hadn't ever done before, but now they have a knee that actually will continue to work for them. All right, so adaptive speed control. This is for the K3 patients. As they change speeds, I always think of it as gears in a car, right? As you increase your speed, that knee shifts into another gear. There's actually 5 gears. The slide at the beginning where Mike showed the pneumatic extension assist, you have the 3 vertical bars. There is actually 2 other speeds in there, and it kind of blends those slow, medium, fast speeds together. So you have a slow, medium, and a medium fast, blending all 3 of the slow, medium, fast. So 5 speeds. As that cadence increases, all of a sudden that pneumatics shifts into another gear, keeping that leg in extending at the speed that it needs to in order to support the patient's speed that they are ambulating at. And then terminal swing dampening. This is something that obviously we don't want terminal impact, but we want to make sure that that knee is in full extension for that next heel strike. Obviously, that's important for all patients, and in the K2 patients, making sure that confidence is there, knowing that that knee is in full extension for that next step, providing that safety and that confidence for those patients. All right. The other things with the Orion is we do have 3 modes. We have a flexion lock. So maybe for a patient that is going to be in someplace where they need to have that knee locked just all times, you can enable that just by pressing the minus button on the back. Or you have a cycling mode. So maybe they're in physical therapy and they are doing they're on a cycling during physical therapy, right? So you can switch it to that cycling mode. And then training mode, if it was programmed as a K3 knee, training mode puts it in single speed ambulator mode, which is actually great for treadmill training, just focusing on gait mechanics. And then it also turns off standing support, which is great for teaching stair descent. You don't want the standing support to engage accidentally while you're teaching stairs, right? It's nice to have that feature turned off. So it's something that physical therapy could turn on that training mode by pressing the button on the back of the knee. So obviously for the K2 patient, they might already be programmed as a single speed ambulator. So the training mode function, the most important thing it does is turns off that standing support to help teach those different tasks like descending stairs so they can continue to improve in their rehabilitation. And once again, you don't have to have any fob or connect anything via your phone. It's just a press of the button on the back. Depending on the number of presses of minus, determines what mode is being put in. And to get out of it, you just hold the minus button down. Obviously, for our so we have an off switch that conserves battery, but we always recommend just leave it on all the time because the battery is over 3 days. So that means if a patient forgets to plug it in one night, it's still going to have enough battery to last. Obviously, that is one of the requirements is they have to be able to work with technology. But that's going to be whether you're K2 or K3, it's going to be one of those requirements. All right. So once again, the profiles of the Orion could be everything from active people or the older K2 patients, obviously. A little bit of delay on my computer. There it is. So just a wide range of patients that the knee works for. It can, as we said, it's one of those knees that can be programmed for K2, but it's not going to inhibit their progression. And if they make it into that K3 category, this isn't going to slow them down from that. It's going to help them, give them the confidence as they're walking, giving them the support and the control and the safety. But then as they progress in their rehabilitation, those settings can be adjusted and now give them those multi-speed variable cadence adjustability into it. And it's something that you can actually adjust as you're doing your follow-up visits with them. You can go in there and you can fine-tune those settings as they are progressing in their rehabilitation. So it's not like an on-off switch. It can actually be done where they're K2, then next 6 months later, or maybe their 1 year follow-up, you recognize, oh, you know what? They're now starting to show some signs of maybe some low K3. So you can actually adjust a couple of the settings without essentially turning on all of the K3 settings. You can just start to slowly let them increase their rehabilitation and that knee support as it's needed. All right, so in summary, we have that enhanced stability performance. So that's controlled stance support, the dynamic slope and stair descent, standing support, stumble recovery, and supported sitting. Of course, all of these are great functions for those K2 ambulators. The deep yield, that's that enhanced yield rate. So as that knee flexes, it increases resistance as the knee flexes. So giving that optimal support and safety for all sorts of situations. And then, of course, we have that natural, efficient motion. So we have the optimal stance release. It's great for the K2 patients, making it easy to initiate swing phase. And then we have the adaptive speed control for as they progress into those maybe a variable cadence situations. And then terminal swing dampening, making sure that that knee is in full extension for their next step. So the links is obviously a lot of what's in the knee, in the Orion is in the Lynx knee, but the Lynx takes it to another step further, okay? So what it is we have a fully integrated adaptive system. So it is connected and communicating to the foot and the knee communicating with each other, providing a kind of optimal support in all sorts of situations. What does that mean for our K2 patients? Well, it's a more integrated knee and foot, and they're talking to each other. So I like to think of it as a brain. You've got one brain in there, right? And what's the first thing that hits the ground? It's your foot. So the ankle senses what terrain you're in, whether you're going down a hill or up a hill or on flat ground. It recognizes that right away. It sends that information up to the brain in the knee. And then let me go back here. And what that brain then does is that says, all right, I want the ankle to do this. I want the knee to do this. And it's coordinating that motion and what it wants it to do in real time. So giving it very optimal support for your patients. So obviously we do have that same support just like in the Orion, but then the foot also stiffens up. So you get the articulation at the ankle, a hydraulic ankle. Then when you're stop walking, it's going to increase that resistance. It will adapt to the terrain, and then it will increase and support that resistance. Obviously, the knee will also lock in full extension or in a flex position. I'll say those are great features for our K2 patients. And then going into that ramp modes, as I said, that foot is the first thing that contacts the ground. So it detects if you're going up or down a ramp, and it can differentiate between a shallow and steep ramp when descending. So it will adjust both the knee and the foot in that real time. So as I said, having that support and that control of the ankle, adapting to that terrain, making the adjustments, therefore giving even more support to our K2 patients that need the most support out there. Then going down, sorry. All right, so going down a slope, what happens? As I said, that foot hits the ground, it recognizes you're going down a slope. Then the brain in the computer in the knee tells the foot to make plantar flexion easier, to get the foot flat faster. And then it increases dorsiflexion resistance to give a more controlled braking effect of the tibial progression over. And then we're back on flat ground. It goes back to a medium resistance for plantar and dorsi. Now, starting back over the top, what does that computer do to the knee? Well, the knee goes to from a high resistance to a medium and then low. Normally you have high resistance to low resistance. So by going to a medium resistance, it allows patients to be on the prosthetic side just a little bit longer going down a slope. So you don't get that drop-off effect at the end of toe-off going down a slope. So for our K2 patients who need the most support and confidence, that ability for them to be on that prosthetic leg just a little bit longer gives them that extra confidence and that extra support going down. Even the slightest grade just gives them that extra support. So this is a unique feature to the Lynx, not in the Orion, because of that communication and that integrated system between the foot and the knee. Then you have ramp assist mode. Oftentimes, you might think of ramp assist mode for those K3 patients, right? They're walking. I remember being out uneven hiking with patients on the Lynx and going up a hill. It just helps them. It gives them a little bit easier uphill access. Well, for the K2 patients, they might still encounter a slight ramp to get into the grocery store, maybe their doctor's office. So having this assist even for them helps them get up the slope a little bit easier. So what it does is you have the increased plantar flexion resistance, which actually provides more carbon heel involvement, and that helps propel the patient up over the forefoot. And at the same time, the ankle dorsiflexion resistance is lowering, easier to progress over that forefoot. And then the knee is actually decreasing the pneumatic resistance by 4, and that allows for increased heel rise. So patients have less hip hiking that has to happen going up a slope. They're able to be smoother and use less energy climbing the slope. So once again, oftentimes think about it in the K3 patient, but this is also very beneficial for those K2 patients navigating slopes, making it easier, less chance of trips and falls because of the ankle, the toes stay up in dorsiflexion during swing. The heel actually comes up a little bit higher, so you get improved toe clearance going up a slope because of that. Once again, preventing those trips and falls and making it easier for your patients. So it also means that you have a reduced hip power needed and increased braking impulse. So that's for going down a slope. That's what the research shows. And then going downstairs, same thing with the Orion. It has that increased resistance as that knee flexes, giving that optimal confidence. With the ankle articulating, you can have a little bit more of the foot on the stair as well. Obviously, in this video, those stairs are very shallow, so he still has to have quite a bit of his foot off the stair. And then once again, going down steep slopes. Sorry, it's not playing. Stance flexion, same feature of the Orion. So I won't go into any more detail about that, but it's the same idea, having that increased support. And then here's for that K3 patient, right? Or those K2 ones that as they progress in their rehabilitation, you now can give them their multi-speed walking again. And here you go. As that speed increases, that heel matches his sound side heel very well because of that shifting gears. As that speed changes, it increases those gears. All right, so the coding, this is all PDAC approved. All the normal codes with the 5973. And as Mike said earlier, the LCD does allow for the 5973 code when it's needed. And I always say the best thing to think about here is think about painting a picture to the insurance company of what your patients are doing on their daily life, right? What is their activities of daily living? And then from there, you can then put in that justification because of their ADLs, not necessarily just saying what the knee does, but by painting a picture of what your patient does on a daily life will help to justify the microprocessor knee.
Thanks,
I'm going to
Chad.
hand it
That's
back
exactly
over
right.
to
Thanks, Chad. And that was actually a question that came up during the Q&A and the Q&A panel was about the K3 feet. And I want to be pretty clear on that. You can't put a K3 foot on a transtibial K2 patient. It's got to be the criteria stated. It is for K3 people unless they meet specific criteria for a fluid or microprocessor knee. So if they meet that criteria, then you can use a K3 foot, depending on if it's needed for safe operation of that particular knee. I think the jury's out a little bit on how that will be decided. You know, I think there's a little bit of question mark on what they're going to end up doing on that to determine safe operation of that particular knee. At Blatchford, we don't have any distinctions that say you've got to have a particular foot on a Orion 3. You can use it on a Navigator, which is a typical K2 foot, multi-axial K2 foot. You can also use it on an Avalon, which allows for 6 and 6 degrees of plantar flexion. So we know it works well on those types of feet. So we don't have a particular stipulation. As far as so that was the big thing. And so as long as you meet the criteria for the knee, you can fit a K3 foot on there. Let's see if I still have control, and I do. So I wanted to take a very brief second to talk about a product that is coming. This will be coming hopefully by the end of the, or it will be by the end of the year. It's called the Avior. This is going to be for a different type of K2 patient than we were talking about. This is more for your patient that would need a locked knee to begin with, and then progress up to a probably low K3 level. So this is a new microprocessor knee that's coming. Not here yet, but just wanted to kind of whet your appetite a little bit about it so you know that it's there. And then and your territory manager will certainly be reaching out to you once it is available. So again, I want to throw up our contact information. And then also up on the far right-hand side there, that is the quiz. So please scan the QR code for the quiz. Oh, I don't know what happened there. I lost the, there it is. So scan the QR code for the quiz and answer that. I turn these in about a week. So I'll give you about a week's notice. If you have trouble with the QR code, it's okay. I'm going to send it out in email and a link, hopefully later on today. So you can always see that there. So scan the QR code for a quiz, and I will pause here for any other questions. Sanjay said, we have had similar experiences with United Healthcare. They're not following Medicare guidelines for potential. I'm not sure exactly what that means. So if you want to reach out to me, Sanjay, feel free. Happy to answer any questions, but theoretically, they're all supposed to follow Medicare guidelines, right? That's what they say in their contracts. So they should be. So I'll pause for other questions. You're welcome, Victor. Again, I love doing these. There's so many people that I know on here that are watching this. So thank you for that. What code is 5841 used for? I don't know that L code, Fred. That's an obscure one. I can look it up. Fred, I'll get back to you. I know you, Fred. I'll send you a text later when I can figure that out. That's a code I'm unfamiliar with. It's not a typical code. What's the criteria for K2 patient being able to get the microprocessor knee? So Karen, it was basically, I don't know if Chad, if you want to scroll back to the top, but it was the criteria, there's 3 or 4 different criteria that they have to go through. That basically states that they've got to meet the criteria, meaning they've got to have an evaluation, they've got to be determined that a microprocessor need did not meet, or a mechanical need did not meet their needs, or will not meet their needs. You don't have to necessarily test it, but it says they will not meet it. They've got to have something that states that this particular knee will improve their functional health, their outcomes, and improve their ADLs. It's got to be indicated for that particular knee has to be indicated for K2. The best way to find that is in the LCD. I mean, not the LCD, the IFUs or the manuals for those particular users. But these are all the criteria. And I can send out a link when I send the email. I will send a link out to the LCD on the cms.gov website, so you can read it itself. That way there's no confusion or misinterpretation. It's all right there, easy to read. So Gerald asked for the slides. We'll be supplying a link to the webinar once that is up and active. That usually goes active tomorrow, so I'll probably send that out tomorrow or Monday at the latest with a follow-up. So I'll send a link to the webinar. If you don't have any questions and you're able to get the quiz, then you guys can go ahead and drop off. Anybody who wants to stick around and ask any other questions, I'll sit on for just a couple of more minutes. But again, thank you for your time. Thank you, Gerald. Brad's got me curious what L5841 is, so I'm going to look it up real quick. It's a polycentric knee code, pneumatic swing, polycentric pneumatic swing extension assist with stance face. So it's not part of these. It is a pneumatic code, so that would fall under the K2 criteria if it was in that list. And I know that list is up here. 5841. Yep. So that does qualify for the K2 in this new policy update, if you're still on, Fred. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate your you being on. All right. With that, I think that's all we have. So thank you very much again, and feel free to reach out to either one of us if you have any questions. Thank you.